Hi there, and thanks for joining me for this week's edition of your Wheel and Anchor weekly newsletter. I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia, where I've been visiting our host Alfie and his partner Lily. How you doing, Alfie?
Doing well. Nice to have you.
It's nice to be down here in Australia. It's been a long time since I visited. Alfie, of course, for those of you that were recently on trips with us in Greece and Turkey, was our host, as well as many other trips, and so it's a lot of fun catching up about all of our recent adventures on our various Wheel and Anchor trips. So for this week's newsletter, I just wanted to actually cover off a few of the common questions we get from some of our members. Of course, we have lots of new people who've signed up and filled in our questionnaire, and so Alfie's going to help me out by posing a few questions from all of you. Alfie, what have our members been asking?
So I got one here from MD in Edmonton, Alberta. It says, are your trips structured, or is there room to go experience the moment in the environment people find themselves in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we like to organize our trips so that there is a bit of a combination between a structured aspect but also adequate free time so you can do your own thing. So I'm a big believer in slow travel. We talk about this all the time. And depending on the destination, depending on the type of the trip, of course, we have different kinds, live-aways where there's lots of time to spend on your own, exploring, discovering, and our more conventional sightseeing trips, which we call experiential trips, which have a bit more of a rigid structure to them, but at the same time...
Well, we always say that it's not mandatory to participate in all of the program. If you have something you want to do in Tokyo that we don't do, then you can say, I'm not coming today because I'm going to go and do this thing I wanted to do.
So we really put a lot of effort into giving you the opportunity, because in the end of the day, it's your experience, and we facilitate some of the best aspects of that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that you have the trip that you want to have at the end of the day.
Yeah,
what's the next question?
Things off the bucket list you wanted to do.
Exactly.
So we got Karen from Courtney, BC. What are your most popular trips?
Well, I think all of our trips are really popular. These days, actually, our live-aways have been increasingly popular because people like to get away for an extended period in the wintertime. We have some sold-out trips this winter to Koh Samui in Thailand, Bali. I think there's a couple of spots left. Also to Madeira, which is becoming increasingly popular among our members. I know
as people hear about it more, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people don't.
Obscure spot, but it's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. You recently hosted one of our Croatia trips. I think that was last fall, wasn't it?
Yeah, that would have been last May even. So it was some time back now.
Yeah.
But that's again one of the more popular tours. It's been running for quite a while. It's had a bit of restructure, I understand.
For next year in the fall, we've changed up the program a little bit. Has some of the same components to it, but it always sells out because we, of course, have our own ship on the Adriatic coast. That's a popular one. Our Japan trip, which recently came back, is also one that's been popular and pretty much sold out every time.
I just did a Turkey tour, which is very similar in structure to the Croatia tour, and people have been on both now. So people that had been on the Croatia tour went on the Turkey trip and said, this is, if anything, more than what I anticipated from building on the Croatia tour.
Yeah, exactly. So, in fact, this coming week, Alfie and I are going to be talking about next year's yachting the Turkish Mediterranean trip, because we're going to be going back next September and October. We have 2 trips lined up for next fall, and Alfie, having just come back with a group this past October, is going to talk all about the highlights of that trip, and I know they had a fantastic time. So, yeah, we really have a lot of popular trips, but that gives you a sense of some of them. What else have we got?
So we've got Dennis from Surrey, BC, and Karen from Campbell River, BC, and they ask, do all the trips originate from Ontario?
It's a good question, because I know that other tour companies often, have a common departure point. Everybody's to leave from Toronto, for example. Our members, of course, come from all across Canada. And so we have designed our trips so that you can choose your own airfare. We can facilitate that for you. But you can join us in the destination as opposed to having to funnel through a gateway like Toronto, because I certainly know if you live in the west coast of Canada, people abhor flying through Pearson Airport, as do I, and I come from Toronto.
I think it works in a lot of people's favor as well, because the amount of people, more and more I find anyway, there's people that want to add a couple of days on the back or a couple of days on the front of the tour, so that they are making sure they get everything they want from their experience.
Exactly. So the answer to the question is they don't originate from any one spot in Canada, but rather folks come from all across the country. And there's one more question I think that
Yes.
came in.
So we have from Patty from Avonlea in Saskatchewan. How long in advance do we put together the trips?
That's actually another great question. And we start working on our programs as much as 2 years in advance. Trips that we run every year, we typically put out roughly 1 year in advance, I think. And, as we were just saying, Alfie, we often change up our trips, right?
Yeah. I mean, it can vary a little bit, like in terms of how far in advance, but yeah, the 1 year mark seems to be about normal.
Exactly. We try to get trips out 1 year in advance. We start the planning at least a year and a half in advance. But in this day and age of travel, where demand for travel is so high and the terms are very onerous in terms of what we have to commit contractually and in terms of deposits and all the rest of it, means that we have to be a bit flexible about the timing. And quite often hotels aren't even giving us quotes.
They won't even do it.
Yeah, or they won't even do it. It's a really interesting travel environment. But you can generally expect that a trip if you're looking for something for next year at this time, for example, we still have 1 or 2 trips for 2024 in the fall that we're putting out. But otherwise, we're hard at work to start releasing our trips in 2025.
Yeah.
Terrific. Well, I think that's all the questions for this week. It's been great to visit with Alfie and Lily here in Melbourne, Australia. As I mentioned, look out for our webinar. You'll find the link in the blog below about our yachting the Turkish Mediterranean trip, and I'm delighted to be presenting that with Alfie and give you his firsthand impressions about that trip. Lots more coming up in the near future. So in the meantime, we're going to continue kangaroo spotting here in a park outside Melbourne. We've seen some already. More to see, exactly. We've even seen a snake today, but that's not a reason not to come to Australia.
Yeah, it didn't bite.
Luckily. Anyway, take care. We'll see you all again in next week's newsletter.